I want to start with three figures that should send a chill down your spine, especially if you pay attention to how the world really functions. 12 commercial ships captured in one sweep, 40 Russian naval units active across 3 different theaters, and $3 billion in assets currently locked down in Russian custody. Naturally, Washington is outraged. But here is the uncomfortable truth nobody wants to say out loud. This wasn't some sudden, angry outburst. This was a calculated strategy, and the most alarming part, we are the ones who showed them exactly how to do it. Let's break down what just happened in the waters bordering Russia. In a move executed with military precision, Russian forces launched simultaneous seizures of LNG and oil tankers across the Black Sea, the Baltic, and the Arctic shipping lanes. These weren't just any ships. They were American-operated vessels and Allied flagships. All of them were detained under legal frameworks so complex that Western lawyers are still scrambling to untangle the fine print. The reaction from Western leaders was exactly what you'd expect: shock, emergency summits, and threats of retaliation. But having watched foreign policy for years, I can tell you this time their surprise was genuine. And frankly, that's far more worrying than the seizures themselves. It proves our strategic planners completely failed to predict a move that was staring them right in the face. Now, I need to challenge an assumption you probably hold about the world. You likely think international maritime law is a shield that protects merchant ships. And while those treaties exist on paper, rules only matter if there's a neutral power willing and able to enforce them. When enforcement itself is turned into a weapon, those rules dissolve into something else entirely. To understand how we got here, we have to go back to late 2022, following the invasion of Ukraine. The West rolled out what they call the most aggressive sanctions package in history. We cut off banking access, froze assets, and implemented the oil price cap. The goal was to keep Russian oil on the market, but cap the revenue to drain Moscow's war funds. To Washington, this looked like a smart, calibrated, precision strike. But to Moscow, it looked like the West unilaterally declaring it ran the global energy trade. We essentially told them, you can sell your resources, but only at the price your enemies decide. And we enforced this by leveraging our dominance over shipping, insurance, and financial logistics. The ultimatum was simple: play by our rules or your ships don't move. For nearly 2 years, Russia took the hit. But while they were taking it, they were also quietly building a backdoor. They shifted their exports to Asia. They built up Arctic shipping capabilities that analysts had once said were impossible. They created new financial channels to sidestep Western banks. These weren't just survival tactics. They were preparations. Preparations for a reality where they didn't need Western permission to exist. Then, in late 2024, the situation shifted from preparation to active conflict. The U.S. and its allies started physically boarding and inspecting tankers in international waters, suspecting them of bypassing the price cap. The justification was sanctions enforcement, but in practice, economic policy had morphed into physical coercion. Moscow watched all of this. They took notes. They documented every single boarding, every instance where the West asserted its authority over global commerce. Then, in mid-December, they found their catalyst. An American-operated tanker collided with a Russian research vessel in the north, resulting in the tragic deaths of several Russian sailors. While Washington called it a tragic accident, Moscow claimed the tanker was a spy ship and demanded a return for a criminal inquiry. When the ship refused, Russia labeled the crew as fugitives from justice. Now, it doesn't matter whose version of that story is true. What matters is that Russia used it to build a legal framework to justify what they did next. By treating the incident as a crime scene rather than a military event, they created a pretext for policing actions that looked like law enforcement, not acts of war. The seizures that followed were not spontaneous. Russian naval units moved in perfect sync across multiple zones, boarding and escorting 12 vessels into their harbors. The crews, hundreds of ordinary commercial sailors, found their status instantly changed. They became material witnesses in an ongoing investigation. They aren't technically hostages, but functionally, they have become leverage in a geopolitical standoff they have absolutely no stake in. What Russia is doing here is challenging the bedrock assumption of modern trade. The idea that commercial shipping operates in a neutral bubble, insulated from great power conflict. They have shattered this norm by deliberately using the exact playbook the West handed them. The logic is brutally simple. The U.S. can board tankers to enforce sanctions in open waters. Why can't Russia do the same, using different legal justifications? Western financial systems can be weaponized to enforce prices. Why can't Russia weaponize its regional military strength to enforce its own security concerns? This is strategic mirroring. It forces Western policymakers to face an uncomfortable reality. Can you really dictate global rules without facing reciprocal vulnerability? The human toll is already accumulating, with families thousands of miles away having their lives completely upended. When commerce becomes a theater of war, it's always ordinary people who pay the price first. But here is the nightmare scenario. Its precedent extends far beyond Russia. This logic sticks. Maritime shipping enters a dangerous new era. Every ship carries electronics that a hostile state could label as surveillance equipment. Environmental laws are broad enough to justify almost any stop-and-search operation. The line between security enforcement and economic hostage-taking is blurring into non-existence. And you can be sure that China is watching. Iran is watching. They're all calculating whether the West actually has the resolve to protect every single potential target across the globe. We are seeing institutional order collapse, not through a single catastrophic failure, but through the gradual erosion of accepted behavior. The energy markets have already learned the lesson. Insurance rates for routes near Russian waters have spiked, rendering some of them commercially dead. Supply chains are fracturing as companies frantically try to price in this new geopolitical risk, creating a strategic nightmare for nations that depend on these logistics. The deepest irony in all of this is that the sanctions designed to isolate Russia have actually created the conditions for them to demonstrate a different kind of power. It's not the power to compete financially, but the power to impose chaos and force adversaries to operate in a state of permanent uncertainty. This is desperation dressed up as strategy, but that's what makes it even more dangerous. Russia knows it cannot win by Western rules, so it's attempting to change the rules of the game entirely. What should disturb us most is our own failure to see this coming. We assumed we could inflict economic pain without ever facing physical retaliation. That wasn't strategy. That was wishful thinking. Now we are at a crossroads. Either we negotiate clear new boundaries for everyone, or asset seizures become a standard part of international relations. Those 12 ships currently held in Russian custody are more than just vessels. They are markers of a transformation that will reshape global trade for years to come. They are proof that the stability we all took for granted was always far more fragile than we believed. Stay attentive and stay engaged, because the future of whether ships sail freely or sit seized in foreign ports is being decided right now. Thanks for watching.